Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And my name's Attiba.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 7, Episode 15, Badda-Bing Badda-Bang. This episode aired February 24th, 1999. And before we go any farther, let's introduce our special guest today, Attiba Royster. Welcome back, Attiba.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, you're always welcome. This is your first appearance in Season 7.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do have 3 questions.
Go for it.
1, why this episode?
Okay.
Let's start there. I always ask you that, so let's start there.
Number 1, why this episode? Because I feel like this episode, not to spoil anything, but is the last time everything's kind of happy.
Oh, okay. I don't know what to say about that.
Besides the finale, but I'm sure you guys will have a lot going on with the finale. I didn't want to jump in for that one. So
I see. Okay. Well, all right. That makes sense. I have heard that it's like a big arc to the finish from here. So that's fine. But I've been waiting all season for Kai Wynn. I know she's coming, and nothing but horror follows her. So I just assume that bad things are coming when she appears.
Oh, boy. Is she? I can't remember exactly. Did the thing happen with Dukat yet, James?
The last thing was the cult that he had, the cult of the power race.
Okay, never mind. The thing has not happened.
Oh, man. I'm so sick of Dukat.
There's a lot more Dukat coming up.
Great. All right, second question, Attiba.
Yes.
Since we're recording this like 2 weeks after Comic-Con, how was your Comic-Con?
Comic-Con was good. It was a lot different. I had resigned to not have such a chaotic con, so I was kind of just being a leaf in the wind. It was good for me. So, I mean, I didn't get to see like everything there was to see, but I saw all the stuff that I wanted to see and a good chunk of things that I didn't know I wanted to see. So what more can you say than that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's always great when you stumble upon things you had no intention or you didn't even know you wanted to see. And you're like, that was so much fun.
I stumbled into a writer's panel that included Terry Matalas, showrunner for Picard, but they didn't talk about Picard. They were sort of talking about the strike, and then they all started to put together like a pitch for a new show. And I'm trying to remember what the details were.
Oh, was it the Pope solving mystery?
That's what it was. It was like Murder, She Wrote with the Pope. It was very entertaining. Yeah, so that's an example of one that I didn't even know that's what I needed to hear. It was very funny.
Not to turn this into Rebinge Picard, but have you seen the latest season of Picard?
Yes.
We have. There was one episode that James didn't let me watch because he said it spoiled something for the rest of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But otherwise, yes, we watched it.
I think there were 2 spoiler points in it. One, which I edited out for Kim.
Yeah.
And then there was one episode where I said, yeah, you really just shouldn't watch it.
Well, the reason that our senses were heightened was because I got the one spoiler of Worf talking about Gowron, which still hasn't happened.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when, after that, James would watch the episodes before I watched them, so that didn't happen, because I do not like to be spoiled. It like ruins everything for me. I just don't like it.
Well, I just wanted to point out for any Paramount executives that may be listening, that is the proper way to do pandering. I appreciate it.
Agreed.
And,
Agreed. I think also Prodigy does a good job of pandering as well. Okay, now, third and final question.
Yes.
Musicals, yay or nay?
I'm not a huge fan of modern musicals, but musicals from their time I think are great.
How about musicals in Star Trek?
Has not a huge sample size, and the samples there are not great.
So you haven't seen the latest episode of Strange New Worlds?
I do have to see the latest all singing, all dancing new episode of Strange New Worlds. And this episode that we're about to review has got some has a number at the end.
There is a little music. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But usually, one of the rules is if Gilbert and Sullivan ever show up in your episode or movie of Star Trek, probably not a great sign. You should probably bail at that moment.
Well, there was that short Trek, I don't know if you saw it, with Number One and Spock.
That was cool. Yeah. That was all right.
Yeah.
And they did sing Gilbert and Sullivan song. So maybe it is next gen only.
Yeah, all right. Well, I was in the Star Trek panel where they announced the musical, and I was very excited because that's just like my worlds colliding, all my happy things colliding into one place.
Well, you thought it was a joke initially.
I did. I didn't think it was real, but it was real. James and I watched it. I also bought the soundtrack. I listened to it again this morning. So yes, you'll need to watch that, and then we can catch up.
Okay, I'm thoroughly enjoying this season of Strange New Worlds so far. So, I mean, even if I totally hate it, that's only like one episode out of it.
And come on, there's always a Star Trek episode you hate in a season.
Of course,
yeah,
has to be.
There's no way around it. Yeah.
No way around it.
All right. Well, then maybe we should start on why we are actually here. And before we talk about Badda-Bing Badda-Bang, and since I don't get to say that during the episode, I thought I'd throw it out there a couple times before we get started. Is there anything to say about last week's episode, which was Chimera?
No, it was perfect. And I think it nicely demonstrated how absolutely awful the changelings are for the most part. And I think it reinforced my idea that the changelings are really hard-coded into this absolutely bigoted mindset.
Since we haven't released this one yet, Attiba, this is the one where Odo meets one of the 100 baby changelings, and the one that turns up is played by Marc.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one.
True. I do think Amanda Plummer's a little over the top, but like, I mean, what are you going to do? Star Trek villains are over the top sometimes. In Picard, rather.
Oh, yeah. She's about as over the top as her father was.
Oh, she was great.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a Star Trek villain way.
Yeah, exactly. I loved her father as...
General Chang.
He brought something to it which was great.
I loved him in The Sound of Music. Speaking of musicals.
Oh, in the unreleased Star Trek, The Sound of Augments.
Oh, yeah, that was another episode where there was a lot of singing, was the last Augment episode.
Yeah. You thought that should have been spun off into a whole separate musical.
Oh, absolutely. That was really good. All right, let's get going on this episode before we run out of time.
Okay.
I have the notes, so I will go. In the cold open, Vic, Miles, and Julian are talking about the Alamo again, inexplicably. Even Vic doesn't want to be in their stupid Alamo program. And then Vic takes the stage and starts singing a song, and the holosuite suddenly changes from the light, happy place it has always been into a dark, smoky place with a surly crowd. People start yelling at Vic, and the music changes, and scantily clad women start taking over the stage and dancing. And Vic is finally shouted off the stage, and a gangster called Frankie Eyes comes in saying he bought the hotel and Vic is on his way out. Apparently, they know each other from the streets of Philadelphia, and Frankie is not a fan of Vic's.
The south side of Philadelphia.
Exactly.
Can you comment on this, Attiba?
South Philly's it's a wild place. I totally would buy that either one of these guys are from there.
Frankie asks Vic if he's going to walk out willingly or be carried out. And Miles finally intervenes and tells the computer to delete Frankie and his thug sidekick Cheech, but nothing happens. The computer won't even freeze the program, so we've got a little bit of a problem, and we cue the theme song.
Yeah, it's funny that it totally turns into like a burlesque show.
Yeah, it's awesome. An awesome start for women in this episode.
I have to comment on Mike Starr, who plays Cheech. I'm like, wow, I've seen that guy in so many things. So I looked him up. He's 79 years old, has 244 acting credits, and has 6 more shows in post right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think like 200 of those 244 are Star Trek episodes, so...
Well, after the credits, Frankie calls Vic Pally and tells him to start packing. Frankie and his thug leave to look over the new business, which leaves Julian wondering what they should do about the computer glitch. Miles says they could reset the whole thing, but it would erase Vic's memory, which Vic doesn't want to do. Julian says he'll talk to Felix. This is the unseen guy that we keep hearing about who designed the program. And they tell Vic to stay out of Frankie's sight, and Vic agrees. Now we go to Ops, and Nog is feeling very protective of Vic. Worf is confused about why anyone cares about a hologram, which is something James and I have been asking ourselves all season, though.
I'm kind of with Worf on this one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Though we've gotten a lot of grief from our listeners about that opinion. But anyway.
When I'm playing a video game, I really care about those NPC characters. I want to know their background.
But what he did for Nog, though.
Oh, that I get.
Yeah.
Yes, I do get that. In fact, that we were probably the easiest on Vic in that episode. Yeah.
That was actually a really good use of Vic.
Agreed. Nog says Vic is not just a hologram, he's his friend. And Worf says he doesn't even exist. But Kira agrees with Nog.
Maybe Nog needs to get some friends.
Aw. Then in comes Julian to say he talked to Felix and the problem with Vic's program is something called a jack-in-the-box. It's a surprise buried deep in the program to shake things up. The only way to set it back to the way it was is to get rid of Frankie, but in a period-specific way. And then Sisko comes out of his office asking what they're talking about, and when he hears it's about Vic, he asks when everyone is going to get back to real work. And then when Sisko is out of earshot, they go back to talking about saving Vic.
Yeah, Sisko is not thrilled by all of his staff basically wasting time on one of Julian's juvenile programs.
There's a couple of times where Sisko is me in this episode, and this is one of them. Like, really? This is what we're talking about? Can we please get back to work? Normally, that's Kira's job
That's
in
true.
Ops, where she tells people to get back to work. Yeah.
Although I was thinking about it, and this is on brand for Sisko, because Sisko's always like not into things at first and then is suddenly into them. Go run this station. Nah, I don't want to run this station. I love this station now. It's my favorite place to be. Go be the emissary of the prophets. I don't want to be the emissary of the prophets. This sucks. I love being the emissary now. It's fine. It's Sisko's thing.
Okay, it's kind of a good point, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say, if they want to solve the problem in a period way, why don't they just kidnap him and bury him out in the desert? And then nobody knows what happens to him, and the mob wouldn't know. The program would reset.
Yeah.
The mob would suspect, somebody would know something about them having a beef, and then Frankie I suddenly disappears. Like, it's not clean, you know?
Oh, okay.
Well, but also they maybe just didn't know that, because none of them seem very aware of this actual period in time.
That's true.
The only person who says something about being buried in the desert is Vic.
I mean, if only there was a character that was totally nefarious and familiar with all kinds of shady ways to deal with things. I guess that guy just wasn't on this show. I don't know.
Oh,
There's been a real lack of Garrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Quark.
Or Quark, yeah. It's disappointing.
It would be a disaster if you got Quark involved.
Well, Quark might really be trying to destroy Vix because he sees it as competition, but there's been a real lack of Garrick recently. Well, now we go to the Sisko quarters, and Cassidy and Sisko are having dinner. When Cassidy brings up Vic's problem, Sisko is just as thrilled about the subject now as he was earlier. She tries to explain that Vic is more like a friend than a hologram, and Sisko is like, please change the subject. Cassidy keeps probing, asking why he has never visited the program, but he evades the question. And then there's this little throwaway line at the end of the scene, which I considered skipping over, but I wrote it down anyway because I thought maybe we might want to talk about it. But Cassidy says, there are times when I can't figure you out. And Sisko says, maybe that's part of the attraction. And Cassidy replies, believe that if you want to. Which, it's a bit of a burn, but it's also kind of funny.
I do feel these two should communicate better. I mean, we saw it when Sisko was having difficulty with her being on the ship, being on the Defiant. And we're seeing it again now. And I can't help but feeling you could communicate with your partner. It's kind of an important thing.
They have a shaky relationship at best.
Right.
Every now and then, Sisko will say something really great about Cassidy, but we don't really see whatever it is that ties them together. We don't really see what that is.
We see more red flags than things that would bind these two together.
Agreed. Now we go to Vic's apartment/hotel room, and Julian and Miles discover that Vic's been beaten up by Frankie's thug. Julian diagnoses bruised ribs and a sprained wrist. Vic is annoyed to hear about the jack-in-the-box. The only real connection Vic has with Frankie is that he beat him at stickball when they were kids, and Frankie seems to be holding a grudge. Miles and Julian suggest that Vic stay out of sight until they can put together a plan, and Vic is worried because if they screw up, he'll be the one buried in the desert.
Couldn't they ask the computer to just let Vic be okay instead of tending to his wounds and having him bleed the whole time? Isn't it just like, oh, hey, computer, heal Vic, and then Vic would just be like, I'm having a hard time figuring out what exactly are the rules of this program, because it seems like they're very arbitrary. There's a lot of stuff that you can't do in this one that you can do in others. So
yeah, the rules are a little cloudy, and I do have a point about a couple of things in my overanalysis where it's inconsistent. But I do think anytime, even in that episode with Nog, when Nog would try to just like give him money or just make something simpler, Vic would resist and say, no, this is my life. It needs to be, my way. And this is real to me. So I don't know if that's part of it.
Maybe.
He's got to remain consistent within the program.
Because otherwise you could just get a pile of fake money because it's just fake money and then just buy the place from the gangster and the end. You got rid of the guy.
Right.
Back to the hotel bar, and more scantily clad dancers are entertaining the crowd. Not just dancers, women. And now we have the even better addition of waitresses in ridiculous Playboy bunny type outfits. And Odo and Kira come in wearing their usually beautiful formal attire. And Odo seems completely transfixed by the dancers on the stage, which Kira finds funny. Kira heads off to check out the casino while Odo sidles up to the bar, making himself part of a conversation with Cheech and a bunch of guys. In the casino, Kira is playing blackjack, and when she goes bust, Frankie steps in and makes the dealer keep dealing until she gets 21.
I don't think that's how the rules of the game work.
No, it's not. I'm not sure how to describe this conversation between Frankie and Kira, but it's supposed to be like flirty and suggestive, and I just found it weird and awkward, but Kira seems to have found a way into the story very quickly.
Well, it seems to be like written like a bad pulp novel conversation.
Yeah. Again, there's nothing real about it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I don't know what this says about the character of Major Kira, but anytime Nana plays a character that's not Major Kira, I love her. Like, I'm in. I'm 1,000% in. Like, on Intendant Kira, I'm in. Like, on this character, I'm kind of in. Like, anytime she has a chance to play, like, softer, or even, like, something as stereotypically, like, femme fatale as she's trying to be here.
Yeah.
I feel like stuff like this is closer to Nana's actual personality than Kira. I don't know. I just really found it charming. I could see that the dialogue itself is very, like, stilted and silly and, like, of a time. But, like, I don't know. I thought she was super charming.
She sort of runs with the role she gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those two examples are similar in terms of sort of her flirty nature.
And I didn't mean specifically that I think she's good playing a more seductive character. I just think that from what I've seen of Nana Visitor in person and in stuff that's not Deep Space Nine, it feels like the kind of hard-edged, super tough character is not with the personality that I've seen in other stuff from her.
She's not the hard-nosed former rebel.
No, like, I'm not saying that it's against type. Or maybe she just plays that character so much when she has a chance to not play that. Like, she really goes to the wall and hams it up, which I appreciate.
Well, that's definitely what she does with the Intendant.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Very hammy. But if you look at how Kira has been portrayed since she got involved with Odo, she doesn't really have that hard edge with him in particular. I could see finding that more relatable. I struggle to find her in basically what you're describing. I think the opposite. I find her more relatable in the position that she's in because she has to be tough. In my mind, it's based more on the history of that character. And so it makes sense. And when she has to do something and show like a softer side with Odo, which she did in the previous episode where she basically let Odo go and she freed that changeling who was being held so that Odo could then make the decision to go out and be a changeling.
Yeah.
She was the grown-up in that situation and she did that out of love. And so to me, that feels more realistic. Anytime I see, maybe it's because it's in the 90s and the female characters are pushed into this sort of sexual type character or somebody who's more flirty than they would normally be, that to me is a struggle because that doesn't feel real to me. That feels like a man writing a woman in the 90s.
Yes. And that's what I meant about the dialogue. Like, it's clearly a man writing, this is the way a woman is...
This is the way a woman is attractive.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree with that, yes.
Written, by the way, in my notes as well, written by two men, directed by a man, and we're going to talk about that later.
Yes.
I have no doubt.
As you might imagine. James has already heard my rant, but we'll come back to it.
It was a prelude to a rant.
Speaking of men writing for women in the 90s, I'm rewatching The X-Files. Not for a podcast, mind you, just for fun.
Oh, just for fun. Who does that?
And I'm into season 8, season 9, and Scully's pregnancy is a big part of this arc. And, like, would have been nice if there was maybe one person that had actually experienced pregnancy on the writing team. Oh,
no. Oh, Yeah, I don't remember a lot about those later seasons of The X-Files. We should go back and watch that too. I mostly remember the early seasons, but that's funny.
New podcast? No.
Yeah, after Voyager. We got to get through Voyager.
Oh, so you are officially doing Voyager.
We are officially doing Voyager.
That's fantastic. I can't wait until 7 of 9 comes along. I'm sure it'll be interesting.
I'll try to remember my reactions at the time when we first saw it.
Oh, I remember some of the reactions. They were priceless.
I remember very many times just saying, why am I looking at her breasts? I remember it's just like everything about the lighting and the outfit was just set up to make you look at it. And I just remember many times saying that to James, like, I'd cover my eyes. I'm like, I can't stop looking. I'm sure that'll come up.
Oh my gosh.
It's great. Can't wait.
Meanwhile, back at the bar, Odo is doing some changeling tricks that are enchanting Cheech and his friends, and he too now is quickly part of the story.
This sort of made me think of Donnie Brasco again.
Really?
You know, getting in with the mob.
Was that what Johnny Depp did? He made his arm go longer, and that's how he got into the mob?
Yeah, that was exactly it.
I thought so.
Exactly the same thing.
No,
yeah.
It was a thing with diamonds. He helped Al Pacino.
Oh, okay. James, the way you can remember crazy crap from movies you haven't seen for 20 years is absolute insanity. Especially if I asked you, what we did yesterday, you'd have no idea.
I do that too. I have that exact same memory for wild scenes in movies.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't remember anything. I'm ridiculous about that. So now we all meet in Vic's room again to discuss what we've learned, and it seems that Frankie was sent to Vegas by Carl Zemo, a real gangster. Vic says the casino makes $1 million a month, and he assumes that Frankie will be skimming off a couple of $100,000 a month to send Zemo. Kira learned that Zemo is coming to town in 6 days, and he'll be expecting his payment. So the team starts making a plan to make sure that Zemo doesn't get the payment. Vic thinks it's pretty dangerous since the money is kept in a safe with a 24-hour guard. I guess, by the way, I did write down here that the time is different, obviously, on the station than it is in the holosuite because they don't do the 24-hour days because of Bashir.
Oh, yeah, because it's Vegas on Earth.
I just ran those numbers through the old inflation calculator.
Yeah.
Have you done that already?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. Okay. So apparently $1 million in 1962 is worth $10 million today. I don't think casinos taking $10 million.
$10 million a month. And
$10.1 million.
Oh my God. And also, it's just like this little tiny hotel as well. All we see is one room. So yeah, it seems insane.
It's an F-list hotel off the strip. That's the thing.
So Kira has managed to get a tour of the safe room with Frankie, and Kira in this scene, she has a wild wig on and another fancy outfit, and then Frankie calls her sweetheart and gives her a $100 bill. Meanwhile, Cassidy is befriending the security guard outside of the safe room. And this guy, by the way, in case you're interested, he was in Dukes of Hazzard in the 80s when the original actors were in a contract dispute and they were replaced for a season.
Oh, funny.
He was one of the guys.
One of the cousins?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
That's why he looks so familiar. Well, for those of us who are old enough to have watched the Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah.
By the way, Kim, Cheech was also in Young and the Restless. That's usually your tradition to point that out.
Oh my God, he was. And I forgot about that. And I think he also plays like a gangster, as I recall. He's a type. You know what? I think he plays a gangster and he's involved with a strip club. I could be wrong. I have to go back and look. He probably just plays himself at this point. Anyway, we now go to Cheech beating up a waiter over a bad cheesesteak. Odo comes in and introduces Esri to Cheech and asks if he can get her a job as a waitress. Cheech agrees, and he also calls Odo Stretch in the scene, which I find very funny.
Well, that was Attiba's idea for the spin-off show with Garrick and Odo solving crimes. Stretch and the Weasel.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, I was going to say in the lizard, but the weasel is so much funnier. Vic comes in now and asks Cheech if he can try to make things right between himself and Frankie. But when they go to see Frankie, Frankie isn't feeling very generous until Vic says he can bring in some high rollers to the casino. Frankie calls Kira dollface in the scene just to irritate me. And it seems like Vic has gotten himself back in Frankie's good graces, at least for now. Now we go out to the Cisco quarters. Cisco asks Cassidy, "You're in charge of what?" Which I really like the way he said that and the way it was the first line of the scene.
Yeah.
And she says she's in charge of distracting the security guards so that they can sneak someone into the room with the safe. And Cisco is like, "This is ridiculous, and my entire senior staff is part of it." Cassidy says you're supposed to help your friends when they're in trouble and asks what his problem is. And finally, Cisco says His problem is Las Vegas, 1962. Black people weren't exactly welcome in Vegas. They could be janitors or performers, but not customers. Cassidy points out this is not the real Vegas, and she's never felt uncomfortable there. But Sisko says that's the lie. In 1962, the civil rights movement was still in its infancy. It wasn't an easy time for our people, and I'm not going to pretend like it was. Finally, someone says something rational about this stupid holosuite program. Cassidy says it isn't meant to be an accurate representation of history. It shows us the way things should have and could have been. Sisko doesn't think we should be ignoring the past. I agree with him. Cassidy thinks going to VIX isn't going to make us forget who we are or where we came from. She says it just reminds us that we are no longer bound by any limitation except the ones we impose on ourselves.
As a white middle-class male, I believe we refer to that time as Vegas as the golden times.
Nice. Really nice.
Well, this goes back to my comment of a lot of these things, like in the holodeck, and where you would be at that point in time is you would play the fantasy rather than the reality.
Mm-hmm. But if they said that, I would have gone along with it. But that's not what they said. She actually said, this is how it should have, could have, would have, whatever. This is how it should have been. And I don't agree with it. Because what it shows us, right, is this completely heterosexual, patriarchal representation. Even if maybe color or species is accepted as equal, it isn't really showing us the way things should have been. I mean, to use Cassidy's words, we still have a problem with this version of reality. If you are a woman, it doesn't make any sense that she would think this was all rosy and how it should be.
That's true. And also, yes, I do think I would have less of a problem with it if they specifically said this is a fictional 1962 Las Vegas.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as Lord of the Rings versus actual medieval Europe.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
True. And then the sad part of that is when they do try to put people of color into shows like that, there are still a bunch of idiots who complain about it. And it's just like, oh my God. All right.
I think this, though, if you were living in this enlightened time period, the Star Trek is set.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Then you would, not modern
Not
days,
the
obviously.
Or now.
You would, I think, be attracted to the fantasy of these things, of taking your world as it is and putting it into these different time periods. And what would be strange about that would be, I bet some of them would be really questionable looking at it from a historical standpoint of like a medieval Europe or antebellum South or something along those lines, or Vegas of the 60s, and looking at, romanticizing these things.
I think people do romanticize it, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because to do that is to ignore the reality of it.
But I think if you had a more perfect society, you would make the assumption that these things weren't that bad. Is that a valid statement?
I see
your point. Yeah, yes. Like, it's hard for us Westerners to imagine what life might be like for someone in the second or third world. Like, just imagining things that we take for granted that, they don't have. So,
yeah.
But I think about, my mom reads all of these historical fiction novels, and it's
God.
like the things that happen to the women in these novels is, I don't think it's historically accurate, but there's a lot of terrible things that happen. And she just reads them like it's, some great fantasy that she's reading. And whenever she tells me the story, I'm just like, you don't see what's happening here? Like the violence against the women, you don't care about that? And she's like, meh. So I don't know. Maybe the summary is people are just blind to everything, and that's what they're comfortable with. What bothers me in the scene is that Cassidy is talking about, yes, she says this is how it should be, but there's no recognition of the fact that the women are pigeonholed into their roles. There's no recognition of that at all.
Yeah.
Yet I think it's good that we're at least discussing the treatment of people of color, but we're not talking about the other thing, the obvious thing to me, that's just right in front of them. And they're participating in it. So how would they not see it?
Right.
That just feels really inaccurate to me. All right, we can move on.
Really quick, fun game.
Yeah.
Kim, if you had a time machine, what's the furthest back you could go and be okay, you think?
Before the pandemic.
Okay.
I don't want to go back much farther.
Yeah, for me, it's probably 1996.
Wow.
Look, there's still racism, right? There's still sexism. So it's hard to say that there was a time that was better. I think before social media, there was some time it was better because you could live in ignorance because it wasn't all around you. But that doesn't mean it didn't exist.
Right.
So I don't think I would like to go back unless to just avoid the pandemic. That I think is...
I'll avoid commenting on this.
Yeah.
Probably wise. Okay, let's...
Okay, moving on. Back at Vic's place, we're making our plan to steal the money. They feel they are short one person in this Ocean's 11 plan that they're making, and they need a high roller at the craps table to attract a crowd. We'll never fear because in comes Captain Sisko to the rescue. Later, the plan is in place, but they want to do one more walkthrough, which Vic does with the help of a chalkboard. Oh, and also Vic calls Sisko Pally here, which I'm sure irritated James.
There were far too many Pallies in this episode.
There's a lot of Pallies in this episode.
I think we've only had 3, but there's still far too many. What is Julian wearing in this scene?
I didn't notice. What was he wearing?
It looked like he was wearing a pajama top.
You know, sometimes Julian is in his pajamas. Was it blue? He's got those blue pajamas that he wore when Section 31 came.
I did not write down the color. It just looked very odd.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even notice. Good question.
And plus, when Sisko comes in, they roll the chalkboard with the plan on it out onto the balcony. Like, if the gangsters were coming in, nobody would look on the balcony.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't notice that either. So we go over the plan now, and the plan starts with Kira prostituting herself to Frankie. Sisko and Vic make some big bets at the craps table, and there's a point in time at exactly 11:45 when one of the count men exits the safe room for exactly 8 minutes to make a phone call. The other count man has a martini brought in, which Ezri will deliver in her sexy new waitress outfit. First, she will stop off at the poker table so Julian can slip some substance in that will make the count man vomit into the martini. Why Ezri couldn't just do this part herself, I don't know. That seemed like an extra step.
They needed to keep Julian involved somehow.
I guess so. Well, she takes the martini to the safe room for the count man. She puts the drink down, and the hologram count man then has to look at her butt, which it's like, okay, Star Trek. This is just a description of the plan. Why in the description of the plan did we have to include the count man looking at Ezri's butt? That I thought was uncalled for. And then when she leaves the room, Cassidy distracts the guard by telling him that Miles stole her chips. And Vic says at this point, too, to Cassidy, and turn on the waterworks if necessary. And again, okay, Star Trek, we get it. While the guard is distracted and the count man runs out of the room to vomit, Nog will sneak in and work on the safe. And then in the run-through, Nog opens the safe in like 5 seconds, no problem.
Yeah, using his Ferengi ears.
Using his ears. And when the safe is open, the tray left by Ezri morphs into Odo with a suitcase, meaning Ezri was carrying Odo in one hand, which I thought was kind of a funny touch.
It's that whole mass question again.
Yeah.
How much mass does Odo have?
And Nog and Odo pull all the money into the suitcase, and then they get out quickly, because Nog changes from his janitor uniform into a security guard uniform.
Yeah.
And then Bashir says, and then we pop the champagne. And they agree that they're going to execute this plan tomorrow. Now out on the station, Julian and Miles are practicing with the vomit-inducing substance. Nog is practicing opening a safe. Odo and Kira are dressing up, and Sisko is practicing throwing dice. I think Odo and Kira like the cosplay part of this plan more than anything else. They're the only ones who seem happy.
Oh, absolutely.
I love Odo's tuxedo. It's
Always.
fantastic.
Yep. And now for the best part of this entire episode. The slow motion walk with the 60s horn heavy music playing as the crew comes around the corner on the promenade in their sharp 60s outfits.
That is a great scene.
I've seen that before and I never knew what it was from. And yeah, this is very cool. Sisko and Kira in particular really pull off the cool.
My cool in that scene were Sisko, who looks like $1 million. He looks awesome.
Totally.
Miles with the hat. Miles looks fantastic. There's something about Miles there. And Ezri in the cocktail waitress outfit.
Oh, Lord.
Honestly, I didn't even remember what really happened in this episode. I just knew it had this scene in it, so...
Yeah. You could have admitted that. That'd be fine. It's a reason to watch it. I backed it up and watched it a couple of times. Well, they walk by Quark and Morn on their way into Vic's, and Quark says, something's going on that we don't know about.
Yay, Morn.
Yeah, obviously.
Good to see Morn again.
In the casino now, we start with more nonsense flirting between Frankie and Kira, but many things go wrong with the plan, starting with Ezri spilling the drink meant for the count man. Julian grabs a drink off another tray, and we're back in business.
What's actually funny here is the way Ezri is like holding the tray with the drinks. Clearly, it's a little bit more difficult than she expected to actually carry the single martini on the tray.
In the safe room now, Ezri finds that the usual count man has been replaced by Gowron. Did you guys notice that?
Oh, I didn't.
Yes. Robert O'Reilly is playing this count man, and at first he doesn't want the drink. I just thought that was hilarious that was Gowron.
I didn't even notice.
She kind of tricks him into drinking the drink, and then she exits the room, leaving Odo the tray behind. Next, we distract the guard, and Nog works his way into the room, but he quickly sees that the safe is not what he practiced on. Which, at this point, I thought, can't Odo just somehow ooze into the safe?
Right.
I don't know.
Couldn't he break the mechanism? Or get into the mechanism?
Yeah, he's super strong. Meanwhile, out in the casino, Frankie is talking about Bugsy Malone, and Cisco is winning big. Vic and Cisco realize there's a problem because Nog and Odo haven't exited with the money yet. And now Mr. Zemo arrives a day early asking for a tour of the count room.
Yeah.
Kira tries to distract him, but it doesn't work, and they head off to the money room. Julian has to stop the first count man from going back into the room by saying that Frankie wants to see him outside. Vic tries to stop the party heading into the safe room by pretending to know Mr. Zemo's exceedingly young girlfriend. And the best part is when Vic asks if the old guy's her grandpa. That was funny.
Good burn.
It was. Well, Cheech pulls Vic away, so now Cisco tries a different tactic of throwing money into the air to cause a ruckus in the casino. And back in the safe room, Nog still can't get the safe open.
I liked how even the mobster's crew starts trying to grab the money on the floor as well.
Oh, yeah. While everyone is crawling around on the floor and screaming about money, Nog finally gets it open, and he has the nerve to say, piece of cake. It's like, dude, you took 20 minutes.
Maybe it would have been a good idea to find out the type of safe and to practice on that one.
Indeed. They quickly get all the money into Odo's magic suitcase, and the security guard dealing with Cassidy and Miles tells another security guard to strip search Miles, which I'm pretty sure causes a little smile to appear on Cassidy's face as Miles is taken away.
Picking on Miles. Everybody has to pick on Miles.
Even in 1962, in a holodeck program, O'Brien must suffer.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Just like picking on the Irish. That's the problem.
And Nog and Odo exit with the money, and Frankie takes Mr. Zemo to the count room where they find an empty safe. Frankie is then escorted out of the casino in slow motion in front of the entire crew, and like magic, everything turns back to normal.
Yeah, like soon as he crosses the threshold, the program obviously resets.
Yep. As the champagne is being poured, Miles comes in, putting on his jacket, and when Julian asks where he's been, he says, I don't want to talk about it. Vic toasts them, saying, to the best friends a hologram ever had. And then he goes up on the stage to sing, and he invites Cisco to join him. And finally, something good happens in the stupid casino as Cisco and Vic sing, the best is yet to come, and it's really good. The end.
That was a spectacular ending, having Cisco sing.
It really was. I had to run through that last part because we were dragging. We're running long in this recording. All right, so who has overanalysis?
Would you believe it? I don't actually really have any overanalysis for this.
I have like 5 points.
I have like 1 point.
Come on, what's going on?
Wow.
All right. Well, James, you do yours, and then we'll do Atiba's.
I have nothing. Over to Attiba.
Oh, you have nothing? Oh. Okay.
My question is, I know it's convoluted, but doesn't it seem like it's super easy to rob this casino? There's like one guy in a room with the safe full of money. Like, I just watched Ocean's 11, and like, that was way more going on.
Yeah, that's way more complicated.
Well, it was the 60s, and Felix isn't a very good programmer.
But $10 million a month, well, I mean, $1 million a month is a lot to just have one security guard who is easily distracted.
I think these were like I said, this is an F-grade casino.
Also, why is there stuff that's able to be written into this program that just that affects everything and can't be changed? Like,
yeah, why is this magic, this hologram?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess they didn't want to do another episode where the hologram, goes haywire, but I think they should have. That would have made more sense.
Oh, like an evolutionary program that actually figures things out. Like, Moriarty.
Moriarty,
yeah.
Because we've talked about Vic being as powerful as Moriarty because he can jump from program to program and he can interrupt the comm system on the actual station. Yeah. He is kind of like a virus, so it would have been easy to say the program had evolved. It didn't have to be this stupid magic jack-in-the-box that somebody created.
Yeah.
So quick rewrite. Quark messes with the program to make sure that all the money from Vic's goes to him. And then in the program, Zemo is actually Quark. That's just quick.
Dang, that would have been really funny.
That would have been a win. Yeah, if he had turned up as Zemo, that would have been amazing. Totally agree. Yep.
And then you could have a whole thing at the end of Quark protesting, well, I didn't really do anything bad, and everybody being annoyed at Quark.
That's a good rewrite. Because there's no stakes again. So, yeah.
Does anybody want to bring up how did they buy a casino that was built by Vic in the Nog episode? And Vic had so much money he could build a casino?
This is the new casino? Doesn't this look like the original one?
Yes. But remember, they were building a new casino.
Yeah, I remember, but I just don't remember there being a change to the new casino.
Vic made it exactly the same because the sets had already been built.
Oh, I see. Okay. We already had the sets, yeah. That makes no sense. If he built it, how did it get... It can't be his casino. Maybe he's still building his casino. Because then how could it get bought without him knowing?
Right.
Yeah, there's something fishy there.
I blame Felix.
Felix.
Yeah, Felix, who we never see.
Is Felix actually Tony Randall?
Was that his name in The Odd Couple?
Yes. Well...
Oh, funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we had the Odd Couple episode already with Quark and Odo. Well, I have similar questions, like, how come they can come and go in the program if the program isn't really responding? Like, how are they getting an exit?
Very limited set of inputs.
Yeah, well, when they said computer for other things, it didn't even respond. So how did they get the door out? I thought that was, like, too easy. And I also thought maybe using Odo's shape-shifting abilities breaks the rules of the period-specific solution.
Oh, because we didn't have any changelings in the 1960s.
Well, Odo wasn't even alive then, so, right? Because he's 30 years old, and we established that last week.
21 human years.
Mm-hmm. And maybe worse than that, when Odo morphs from being the tray into himself carrying a suitcase, wouldn't that suitcase be part of him?
Yes.
He shouldn't have been able to set it down, and he did.
Oh, that's a really good point.
He set it down, and then they loaded it up, and he shouldn't have been able to do that.
Ah, okay.
So again, breaking rules left and right.
I can headcanon this.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Okay. Odo, learning it from Lars, managed to basically disassemble at a molecular level an actual suitcase and then kept the molecules of the suitcase within his morphogenic matrix so that when they went into the room and he was the tray, he basically reformed the actual suitcase from the material he'd actually kept stored in his own matrix, creating a suitcase and an Odo.
Wow, that is quite a story. Never having been done before or explained.
That's what I'm doing now.
That is some serious headcanon. Okay. Oh my God, I can't even argue that one.
That's why you keep me on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it. My next question is, was it really impossible to ask the computer what type of safe was in the program instead of just having Kira look at a thing she'd never seen before in her entire life and then tell Nog what kind of safe it was? It seemed like we could have figured that out.
I have maybe a little bit of headcanon here.
Okay.
The computer was actually modifying the program to make it more difficult.
After the fact?
So
now you're reaching. Because it would have then it would have interfered with all of their plans. And well, and maybe it did because the guy ran into into the tray.
The NPC ran into Ezri.
Good point.
And then a different guy in the count room.
Right. Gowron. And then Zemo turned up early. Okay.
So I think maybe the computer was messing with them.
I will give you that one. That one's fair enough.
Thank you.
And then my last question is, what is happening with Sisko and Cassidy? Is this a real relationship or just something for them to do to keep themselves busy?
After the episode, remember where Sisko says about how he, Jake, and Cassidy are important, the three of them together.
Right. It
is odd that they're not communicating better. And then after the episode where Cassidy, he's very uncomfortable with Cassidy being on the Defiant and promises to, basically express himself better. It still seems strange that they would have these blocks, as it were, that they wouldn't talk about.
Yeah.
Well, how long have Sisko and Cassidy actually been kind of cohabitating? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, because she went off
to
prison, and then she came back, and I think they've been together
right,
since.
She did go to prison, and then she came back.
Well, since
to steal an Attiba quote, prison changes you.
Oh, geez.
You said that about Miles.
It's like from sometime before Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
So over a season.
Okay. I know that when people who have spent a considerable amount of time, for the most part, dealing with things their own way, like in their own company, like suddenly have to like deal with each other's stuff, it can be like a frosty period of when you're still kind of like, well, this is my stuff as opposed to this is our stuff. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. That's the only thing that I can, that's the only way.
Yeah.
He was used to having this station and this quarters and the Defiant being his stuff. She's used to the Zoso being her stuff and like her domain. And now they're trying to like negotiate having a shared situation.
Oh, I could see that.
And like, they're not great at communicating things.
Okay.
They're not great at communicating.
They're still building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess, you know, because they are adults and they're definitely mature adults. I could see them being very set in their ways. That I would agree with. And maybe they don't have to explain themselves to another party about the way they want to do things in their lives or their feelings about things. So, okay, that's a really good point. I would take that as they're still in an adjustment period of almost sort of realizing, wait a minute, I have to care about what my partner thinks.
Exactly. It's like when my partner asked me to go see Barbie. I wasn't super into it. I wasn't thrilled. I grumbled. I went and saw it. It was great. I had a great time.
I actually have my pink shirt set aside.
We'll be going on Monday, right, James? Not
I think so.
tomorrow, but next Monday, yeah.
Well, I would love to off air hear what you have to say about it. Kim.
All right, we'll talk about it. We just went to Mission Impossible, and that was awesome.
That was outstanding.
It's absolute insanity, that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were all my points. So nobody else has any more analysis? All right, then I'm going to go to women in the future. So Esri, in her crazy cocktail waitress outfit, reminded me of Jadzia in a bathing suit in whichever episode that was, I think where they went to Ryza. It's like we were just looking for a way to make this happen. And that's maybe why it annoys me so much. But beyond that, I mean, I don't even, I've already talked about it, but somehow we've changed the paradigm so that people of color and even aliens from other planets are accepted as equal into this world, but the same cannot be said for the women. I mean, let's talk about what the women characters have to do in this plan. One of them is dressed as a Playboy bunny, which is somebody's fantasy. I'm guessing one of those three writers or one of those two writers or the director. The second woman has to basically prostitute herself out to a gangster, which again is like some weird fantasy from a movie. The third has to falsely accuse a man of stealing money from her, and if that doesn't work, she's instructed to cry hysterically. These are three stereotypes from movies, not from reality. So pretending like anything has been fixed in this hologram about the time of 1962, to me, is a complete joke and is a total insult. And I was so annoyed when I got to the end of this episode the first time. That's why I was like, I asked James, why is Attiba coming on for this? I'm going to be so annoyed. I don't know why he wants to come and talk about this
I
episode.
recall your second comment was, and I have to make notes for this?
Yeah, I should have assigned this task to you, and then I would have been less annoyed because I wouldn't have watched it a second time. But if we're going to be truly blind to differences, there should be men dressed as scantily as the women. There should have been men dancing. There were no men dancing. There should be women as high rollers. And any one of them could have been sent to distract Frankie. It shouldn't have had to have been Kira. It should have been anyone. But we're not ready to write for that in the 90s. I don't know that we're ready to write for that now, but we weren't ready to do it then. And it wouldn't have bothered me as much if we didn't pretend like this was somehow supposed to be a great depiction of that time period, but set in the future. That's what annoyed me about it the most. It's like if you had just said it was the 60s, I would have been like, yeah, that's what it was like in the 60s. But no, we made a point of saying, oh, but this is how it should have been. No.
So you're saying they should really embrace the fantasy. So you would actually made a casino where there would be aliens, there would be women, there would be more people of color. It would be this casino written in the theme of what it was like, but with a more realistic for their time period mixture of people in the casino.
If you're going to claim that you've taken a time period and you've sort of fixed it, you fixed the problems, then you need to fix the problems. You should only be introducing problems from your current time. And they did do this a little bit actually on an episode of Discovery, if you remember.
I don't.
With Giorgio. But they did try to do something similar in that episode. And even in Picard, they show like a Vegas-like place, right? But it has all different problems. If they just wouldn't have tried to tell me that they fixed it,
Yeah.
I would have accepted that, yeah, that's just how it was in the 60s or even in the 90s. But it's just like, no, you didn't fix anything. And it doesn't help that it was written by two men and directed by a man. Just, did you ask a woman? I don't know.
I'm going to guess no on that one.
That's enough ranting. Let's move on to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating? Let's start with Attiba. What is your rating?
It would be thumbs down, but that one slow-mo shot raises it to neutral.
I think we can all agree the slow-mo shot is a thumbs up. James, what is your rating?
It gets a thumbs up just because of Esri in the cocktail dress.
Oh, God damn it.
Wow.
No, it gets...
that's funny.
It gets a neutral. It might even... It's even leaning towards like a thumbs down, because I remember watching this at the time and going...
It's not great.
It's not really a Star Trek episode. I'm not
true.
really into... I really honestly don't like caper movies because I find them so horribly contrived for the most part.
It's like we're getting all of our things in that we really want, right? In these last two seasons, we had the Donnie Brasco movie. What was the other one? We said, oh, this is just like a movie of the time period.
Trey in the Wind.
Oh, Time's Orphan.
Oh, Nell?
Yeah, that was Nell. And there was another one this season too. And now this one. Yeah, now we've gotten our caper movie in. Oh, we had the war movie.
Oh, right.
We had that as well. Yeah.
The bad propaganda war movie.
Oh, let's not forget the magnificent Ferengi.
That one worked. Because
that one was actually entertaining. Yeah.
No, but it's still like, let's get our...
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that really was an homage to the original movie. But I think the problem is I don't like caper movies. They don't really appeal to me. And this felt like we wanted to do a caper movie in Star Trek, and it was meh. I'm actually talking myself into a thumbs down. So even though there was some great visuals in this, the promenade scene in slow motion with all of them looking awesome, that's a thumbs up part. The rest of it, if I never saw this episode again, it would be like, if this episode was lost to time, became the lost Star Trek episode, it would be oh well, things happen.
I think I could pick some other ones if we could only pick one. I would probably pick a different one.
Over to you, Kim.
Well, I didn't even write down a rating. I mean, I agree. Thumbs up on the promenade scene. That's actually just awesome, but it is stuck in the middle of a bunch of garbage I didn't like. So I'm total thumbs down on this episode.
Honestly, I usually just jump over this episode to get to the other episodes, but I figure there's so much going on. There's not a good point to insert myself in that run that, like, I might as well just come here for, like, a lighthearted situation.
We have a better conversation when there is something to talk about. Like, we didn't have a ton of things with some of the serious ones that you were here for. So, yeah it's good to come and get a little rant in. Well, this wraps up season 7, episode 14. Come back next week for episode 15. And before we move on from here, first, thank you, Attiba, for joining us. And is there anything you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, I am chuffed at the news that you guys are going to be doing Voyager. I think that is incredible. I cannot wait for what women in the future points will be made.
You will be invited back to Voyager.
Just know I have a much more complicated relationship with Voyager.
That's fine.
Oh, even better.
My relationship has been very complicated with this show.
I'm going to start banging the drum for the Rebinge Enterprise.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, dear.
I suggested to James that we do the animated series, like not one for one, but we just, because that show is so weird, there's just so many crazy ones we could talk about.
If you were taking Patreon requests, there's one episode in particular of Enterprise that I would request that you guys review. And it's the one where Archer and T'Pol are slathering gel all over
I
each
have
other.
seen that one.
Kim has seen that one.
That was the last episode I watched.
Oh.
I was like, what is this? This isn't Star Trek. And I never went back.
But yes, I'm super excited to hear that you guys are doing Voyager. Myself, you can find any of my work, my art, or anything that I'm doing on my Instagram. I'm at Attiba K, and you can check my website, attibaroyster.com. Also, you can check out my podcast that I do with my brother, where we talk about other pop culture ephemera and just things that strike us as needing to be talked about on my podcast, Teebs and Kid Phoenix Versus. You can find that where all greater podcasts are sold.
We still have to do some more Star Trek movies, too, together.
We have to do the whale movie.
We do. Do we want to do good ones or bad ones? We have to figure that out. I say we do Star Trek 5 next, because that will be great.
Oh.
I'm open to that.
Oh my gosh.
I'm open to that.
And then a good one, and then a bad one.
Okay. Just like the way the movies are. Good, then bad, then good, then bad.
The thing is, if we do Star Trek 4, I'm going to be out here banging the drum about how I think Star Trek 4 is actually better than Star Trek 2, but I digress.
Wow.
I waffle back and forth between 2 and 4 because they're both great movies. I mean, we talked about that when we did The Wrath of Khan. They have different positives, right? One is just so funny,
right.
And the other one is just so dramatic. Yep. But I get it. All right, well then, Attiba, I guess that's a wrap for you on Rebinge Deep Space Nine if you're not going to come back anymore for this one. I mean, we're almost to the end of the show, so we will pick you up then in Voyager at some point.
Love it.
Okay, so we then look forward, hopefully, to a better episode next week. Actually, I've already watched the next episode, and it is much better. So in the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can find us on all the social media platforms at Rebingeit. And you can join our network's Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.
And that's it for me.